Hello and welcome back. This is my first of my Make 9 Makes videos for 2020. Earlier this year, I posted my Make 9 goals for the year, and I am almost finished with the top row of goals. So my first goal was to finish the Edie tops that I had cut out from the Sew Over It Edie pattern, which is in their Work to Weekend ebook, which I love. It's probably my favorite sewing pattern so far as wearability. I live in these shirts, but I'm not quite finished with that goal. I have one more that has been cut from this gorgeous Rifle Paper Company fabric. It's a knit that I got from Hawthorne Supply Company. I think you can also get it on Rifle Paper Company's website right now. But that is my final Edie top for my Make 9 goals, and then I will be able to make the video for that. I also made my Betty dress, which was my second goal. That is 100% made, but it doesn't fit. So that is going to be another video, another time when I learn more about fitting, and that will just be a saga in its own right. So we're gonna skip that for today. But my third goal for the year was to make a matching ensemble to go with my Betty dress for Easter. Now, it did not actually make it for Easter. I did not finish these until Mother's Day, which in the States is mid-May. It took a while longer than I expected. However, I did get them finished and we looked very extra. I do not think I will be making any more matchy-matchy ensembles for the entire family. It was too much. I think in the future, if I do it, I will make it maybe a print for me and a solid that goes with it or coordinates in some way, but to have all of us wearing prints was a lot. I'll pop into some pictures right here. But what I want to talk to you about today was the ensemble that I made for my daughter. And I'm going to talk to you about two patterns. The first one is See Kate Sew. It's called the Gold Collar Girl for Baby. This one is newborn to 12 months. There's also a version of this that is 18 months to 10. The newborn to 12 months also includes bloomers or a diaper cover, and it is adorable. I chose not to use this one, and I'll talk about it as I go through the pattern. I chose not to use the bloomer pattern that comes with this, and I actually went for the Violet Field Threads Ruby diaper cover, which I love. And I'm just gonna talk to you about the patterns and how they went, the pitfalls that I had, and some things to look out for. First of all, again, the first one is called the See Kate Sew Gold Collar Girl for Baby, and it's newborn to 12 months. I made the 12-month pattern. It has an option for pockets, but I left those out. So I'm gonna pop in some pictures of the actual garment on my little girl. It was precious. I did the shirt length. There's also a dress length, but right now she's crawling, and so it would get all up under her knees. So I saved it, the dress length that maybe I would do another time or in another setting. Maybe if she were a newborn and not crawling, a dress would have been perfect. But for her current needs and mobility, I made it the shirt length. So I made some notes. This is the piece for the front bodice. Now, as you're going through the pattern, it's got some pretty good instructions, but it doesn't tell you about the fact that if you are using a yoke, I'll show you some pictures up here. There's this optional little yoke piece that can be a contrasting color, which is adorable. For my personal design, I didn't use that. I was just going with the solid white and the trim that matched my dress. But if you use the yoke piece, it never tells you this. There's some very almost imperceptible gray lines here, depending on which size you're cutting out. If you are using the yoke, then you need to trim the bodice piece to those lines. If you're not using the yoke, you don't need the yoke piece of the pattern at all. It's this tiny little piece that looks almost like this. I've made this pattern twice, but it was about 2 or 3 years in between making it. I made one for my niece a while ago, and both times, for some reason, that part of the pattern just really tripped me up. And I had this other pattern piece that I was supposed to match, but it went out to here and it didn't match up, and I wasn't sure how long that was gonna make it extending from the bodice piece. So if you are using the yoke, trim it here, use the yoke piece. If you're not using the yoke, just use this bodice piece. The sleeve binding, as well, I found the pattern piece to not quite be what I needed. One option is to use bias binding. That would be perfect. You wouldn't need to do anything. You would just use the 1/2 inch bias binding and that would be perfect. This piece, it's 1.5 inches. So if you're using this piece, you're going to have a clean edge on one side, and then when you fold it inside the garment, that's going to be a raw edge, which I didn't want. So I cut it the width that I needed, which is double this. This is on a fold. And I made it 2 inches. Instead, I just cut it with my quilting rotary cutter and my ruler. And that way I was able to have it folded, and then fold in the middle, just like bias binding. So if you're using the sleeve binding piece and you want it to match your fabric, which I did, here's my little sleeve binding. It turned out great, but I didn't want this inside to be a raw edge. I wanted it to look finished as well. So again, that was a piece that I needed to alter to have it look the way that I wanted to. The sleeve ease, easing the sleeve into your pattern. She has a link. I have the PDF pattern. I'm not sure what she has, if there's a paper pattern or not. But on the PDF pattern, I'm assuming she's updated her website since this pattern was published. And so when you click on the link, it goes nowhere. So if you are making this pattern, I'm going to put the current link. She still has the sleeve ease up on her blog. I'm going to put the current link in the description box so that you're able to find it. It took me a while kind of searching through Google and going through her blog and searching for search terms to try to find it, but it is still up there. It's just not the same link. The next step I wanted to mention was step 17 in the pattern. And what it is, you have the interfacing. That's what you're making. It's this collar interfacing here. And it says when you're done to finish this sleeve allowance off. I actually didn't, and I didn't on purpose because I wanted to iron it out flat and have it fold under and be a flat seam instead of one that had been serged off or zigzagged together. For me, I wanted it flat because I actually used Wonder Under. That is not technically the interfacing that you would normally use, but what I wanted it to do, it's just such a tiny little collar. I didn't want it flipping up and hitting her in the neck. So I carefully ironed it down with the Wonder Under. And that's just, Wonder Under is a brand name. It's a Pellon product, but it's sticky on both sides. And so it ironed it carefully, again, to the front of the bodice. And you can peel it off. It's not like it's stuck there forever and ever. If you made a mistake or something, you could put another piece underneath there. But it keeps it pretty stable so it's not flying up and hitting her in the face. So that's why I didn't finish my edges, because when they ironed flat, they were going to be stuck in there and I didn't want any extra bulk. On the buttonholes, thankfully this is a buttonhole placket. So if you were to mess it up, you're not going to mess up your entire garment. Just stitch rip that off, make a new placket and start again. One thing that I did not look at before I did my buttonhole spacing, which I was so precise and careful about. I used 6 buttons here, but I probably should have used 5 because the last step tells you that your hem, I think, is supposed to be 1.25 inches, something like that. And so had I done the actual recommended amount, I would have had a tiny little bit of my buttonhole still peeking through. And I just thought that was not only not the look that I wanted, but I was disappointed because I didn't want to have to redo my fabric. It's a very special Rifle Paper Company fabric and I loved it. And everything else was looking great and I liked the button spacing. So what I did, I just serged the bottom edge and folded it under. It's about a 1/4 inch seam. And I think it looks great, honestly. The bottom of the dress, you don't notice that it's supposed to be taller or anything. I liked how it looked, especially for a baby garment. It didn't look out of place at all. So those are my recommendations for the Gold Collar Girl pattern for baby. I love this pattern. I likely will be getting it in the older sizes, 18 month to 10 at some point, just because it's so sweet. And if she has a little sister someday, then we can use it as kind of a stair step of matching sister outfits or something like that. Again, the CK Sew Gold Collar Girl for baby comes with a bloomer pattern. And let me tell you, they are adorable. However, I was trying on the pattern that I had made for my niece. I told you that I had made one for her a few years ago. And my sweet little girl has the chunkiest thighs. And so the top fit her perfectly, and the bloomers pulled up to about her knees. So I decided from that point that I was going to search for a new bloomer or diaper cover pattern and figure out one that would fit her. As I was reading through the instructions of the C. Kate Sew pattern, I should have realized before, but I realized that the elastic size and the size for the thighs is actually adjustable and you can fix it on your pattern. And so I could have gone with her bloomers and just made a different size of elastic. But at that point I had already chosen a different pattern. I was excited to try it. So the next one in this ensemble is the Ruby Diaper Cover by Violet Fields Threads. And tell me that's not the sweetest thing you've ever seen. It's technically reversible, but you are gonna have some French seams on the outside if you reverse it. So I guess if you kind of sewed those down, you'd be fine. And if you didn't use a contrasting thread. But I really love this pattern. I don't have that much to say about it except that it's amazing. I did, again, you can check the thigh measurements. That I think is probably the most important. There's a little tummy measurement and a little thigh measurement. So don't assume that your baby fits within that range. They might have skinnier thighs. My daughter's little best friend that she plays with all the time has tiny little legs. And so if I were to make a matching one for her, which they match sometimes, I would have to make a much smaller elastic opening. So if you're making this as a gift, I would definitely recommend asking the mom to send you measurements so that you're able to make it custom, which is what we love about sewing anyway, right? That you're able to make it just for the body of the person that you're making the garment for. So a couple of notes on the Ruby Diaper Cover. There's one step at the first when you are actually joining the pieces together. They say that you need to make kind of a gather stitch along one side and ease it into the opening. I found that very unnecessary. I did make the gather stitch. I started doing what they said, and then I paused and started to look at them as puzzle pieces and started thinking, what is the final goal of this part of the garment? I looked at the final pictures on the pattern, which comes with full color illustrations. They're very helpful. And for me, I did not find the gather stitch to be helpful at all. They fit together perfectly. They're the exact same length on those pattern pieces, and so you shouldn't have any trouble. If you want to use the gather stitch, great, but if you, like me, find it to be confusing, there's really no reason that you need it. The seam turned out perfectly. It's this piece right here. One piece is fitting into the other one, and it kind of is a curved seam, and you really don't need that gather stitch. So that was my first thing. My second thing probably should have been the first thing. If you get this as a PDF pattern, just notice as you're printing it that the high-waisted diaper cover and the regular waisted diaper cover are two completely different pattern pieces. I didn't check that before I hit print, and so I was expecting there to be a regular diaper cover and then a high diaper cover that went a little bit further on the same pattern piece. It's not that way. So I printed out several pages that I did not need at all. It also has some ties and some optional ruffles. I didn't need those pages because I just made mine to be plain. It has a plain front and a plain back. There's optional ruffles. And so there was a lot of printing that I didn't need to do. I was in a hurry trying to make the deadline of making them match by Mother's Day, and so I didn't pay as much attention as I should have. But make sure that when you're printing those, you notice that those are two separate parts of the file. And lastly, when it lists the elastic for the waistband, it says either 1/2 to 1 inch is what it lists as your notions. It's not really optional. You don't have, oh, I could use 1/2, I could use 3/8, I could use 1 inch. It's 1/2 if you are doing the shorter ones that are just kind of up to a regular waistband, and it's 1 inch if you're doing the high-waisted. I found these to be plenty high-waisted for my little girl. She's 12 months and they came pretty high. If you pull them all the way up, they come pretty high anyway. I would think for such a small child, the high-waisted ones would come up almost to their armpits. So the high-waisted would probably be cuter on maybe an older toddler, but for the younger ones, these have plenty of rise in them, at least for my little girl, they did. So those are my notes for both patterns. Definitely gonna sew some more of these. I'm gonna pop a little picture in here. I actually wound up just putting them over a onesie the other day and they looked like little summer shorts. So this is a great scrap busting pattern. I hope this was helpful. If you are looking to make some baby clothes, one, it's so fun, and two, again, it's perfect for scrap busting and perfect for gifts. I know that handmade gifts are so special to mamas, and so if you are thinking about making something, check for sizing, ask about those thigh openings and how much elastic you're gonna need, but definitely consider making both of these patterns for your own little ones or for the little ones in your life. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.